Buildings are basically the accumulated knowledge and the accumulated living patterns of people over time. What I find so fascinating about living in South Florida is that we have a very narrative architecture. Buildings do tell us a lot about how the city was founded, the evolution of the city, the evolution of our ideas about the city, the ways in which we relate to being Miami or Miamian, and I think that Miami is a great example of being able to read the history of a place.
It's easier to read the history of some places through their buildings than other places because some cities have done a better job, some cities and towns and suburbs have done a better job of retaining their identity through their buildings by saving their buildings, and historic preservation plays a very strong role in allowing us to read the history of a city. Architecture is our imprint on the land, and it tells us what people were, what the aspirations and the hopes and the fears and the successes and the triumphs and the failures were of any given time.
This land, flat as a tabletop, rock and sand covered with curly-topped Caribbean pines and palmetto scrub, as far as the eye could see, rose slightly as it neared the bay and formed a hammock, the tropical name for forest. There, live oaks, ironweed trees, the gumbo limbo, the strangler fig crowded each other, making a jungle cool and pungent, away from the piercing rays of the constant sun.
Miami. The name inevitably conjures up the notion of a paradisiacal place, the Magic City, a tropical wonderland, the American Riviera, the Boom City. Miami is as much an idea as an assemblage of individual memories and man-built forms among an intractable natural landscape. This city developed quite literally as a city in the garden. So pervasive was the lushness of the surrounding wilderness. From sandbars to wetlands, the bay, limestone ridges, freshwater springs and rivers, and the sky, nature was ever present. Nature kindled the imagination of the people who migrated to South Florida.
We have this flat land, we have this stage, and we also have the opportunity to have landscape and exotic plants, beautiful tropical flowers grow almost overnight. We can create a very exotic landscape, and we have had a very exotic landscape thanks to the likes of John Fairchild and others who imported any number of plants to Miami, but also thanks to the hurricanes that blew in trees and seedlings from the Caribbean.
To understand Miami's architecture is to experience the complex and shifting relationship that exists between natural and man-made environments. This duality is the foundation underpinning much of the city's distinctive appeal. From its beginnings, South Florida's subtropical architecture echoed a landscape mostly defined by its openness, lushness, and luminosity. Architecture has been framed and contained by the hinterland, the raw materiality of South Florida's landscape, its dense pinewood and mangrove forests. Ubiquitous palm trees and limestone ridges was not only the source for construction materials, but has served as the source of architectural ideas and forms. Nowadays, a tamed nature has become petrified, and the upright palm tree has become the city's most recognizable symbol. We often find among the white towers that have become the signature of Miami's contemporary urban skyline the vanishing traces of a city that once was. As a leading expression of material culture, buildings are the embodiment of the aspirations, values, and the struggles of their builders and inhabitants. In looking at Miami's architecture, we wonder, can we understand the culture and history of such a complex place by just looking at its buildings? What can architecture tell us about places such as Coconut Grove or the streets of downtown Miami? How can our national and local history be expressed in structures like Little Havana's bungalows or the resort hotels of Miami Beach? What is the meaning of Coral Gables' old Spanish tile roofs, or Opalaca's domes and minarets?
I think architecture is always connected to the question of technology, and technology is always changing. And so we can track the history of our culture architecturally through the development of the technology of building. But I think it's also connected with the way we live. I think architecture is also reflective of identity. And I think that's a very big theme in South Florida. If you look back through many decades, in fact, if you look back to the foundation of the city in the late 19th century, I think it's pretty clear that Miami architects, builders, developers, civic leaders have been involved in creating the idea of Miami through building works. And that has just continued and been amplified over many years.